My name's Chris and welcome to the Benchtop Micro Shop. In today's video, I'd like to briefly explain a very simple modification using rubber drawer liner that I made to my compound miter saw that greatly reduced the dust that my saw puts out uncollected. If you want to see how I did this, stick around. So what I'll show you today is just a simple cut demonstration. I'm going to take two repeated cuts for each setup, one having no dust collection and one with my optimized setting. I'll take two cuts from a standard 2x6, collect all the dust. It's not super scientific. What I did is very thoroughly cleaned my saw initially, and then after each set of cuts, I dusted the saw from top to bottom, cleaned off my entire workbench, and captured the dust in one of these 3 jars. What I also did to ensure with the uncollected and the semi-collected tests, I provided a shroud behind the saw to catch any dust that my saw was throwing behind it. What I didn't capture was any dust that fell through this crack in my workbench, any dust that went airborne and ended up not on the surface of my workbench or on the floor. I didn't collect any dust off my floor because my floor was probably dusty to begin with. And that way my test was repeated with as close of a repeatability as I could do. Next, I just want to show you what's under the hood, so to speak, of the modifications. Now, as a note, my saw is unplugged for this demonstration. So you can see that my modification consists of 2 boots, and I have some wire here, some uncoated wire and some coated wire that just provide a little bit of a frame. There's an outer shroud, which is held in place with magnets. These are rare earth neodymium magnets. This is simply a semi-rectangular piece of rubber. And then this is a conical piece that I've wrapped around the stock shroud. And what this primarily does is it allows for there to be absolutely no gaps between the off throw of the blade and the dust chute. When the shop-vac is running, you feel an awful lot of suction coming up through here. As a matter of fact, the whole purpose of the wire is to keep the shop-vac from sucking the wire in on itself, and also to prevent it from coming into contact with the blade. This is actually the second boot I've made. The first one came into contact with the blade because the dust collection from the shop-vac pulled it back in on itself, and the blade caught it and actually cut a nick out of it in 2 places. And then you can see the other half of the shroud here, and all that does is fill the gap between the stock guard and the boot. And so what that does is it deflects any dust that were to try to escape out the sides down and back into the airstream. And then just as a note, the areas I cleaned were obviously on the saw, anywhere up above, down and underneath the saw. The large chips I was referring to went down through here, in and around, behind, and all over my mount. I thoroughly cleaned my workstation top after each test. So for the first part of my test, I'm going to take a standard 2x6 and make 2 cuts through it, and I'm going to capture all the dust behind, on, and around and under the saw. Of course, you can probably see the cloud of dust that's formed. Horrible. There is dust everywhere. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and clean this up. Just want to take a moment and show you the lovely layer of dust that's been plastered on my workbench. You'll see the 3 piles here, or at least you can clearly see the uncollected pile. This is with no shop vac or dust extractor hooked up to the saw, with the stock setting, with my modification completely removed. This is the dust that essentially went in and around and on the workbench. There's some pictures I'll put in the video. The second setup was with the shop vac hooked up through my dust collection piping, and the standard dust port of the saw, making the same 2 cuts. This is the pile of sawdust I got from that. You can see it's significantly, it's probably less than a quarter of the uncollected dust. And then looking at the results with my boot, I actually probably left as much dust in this jar stuck to the sidewalls as I did actually get out on the workbench here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this so you can see these 3 piles. Alright, so here you can see a close-up of the 3 piles. Once again, this is no dust collector hooked up or no extraction whatsoever. This is stock, and this is with my modification. Something of note is the large chips and splinters that fell down through the guard and the base plate and were actually sitting underneath the saw when I finished the cut. Anyhow, I was absolutely amazed at the difference that this modification made. I've had this saw set up with a cardboard shroud and hood before at one of my past homes, and that contained the dust to within a local area of the saw. But that saw right there is one of the main reasons why I hated making cuts indoors, and with the exception of sanding, is the main reason that I prefer to work outside whenever the weather's nice. However, the weather's not always nice, and it's nice to be able to work inside of a small space like half of my garage. I do. And of course, it's always best to collect the dust at the source. So what I'm going to continue doing is optimizing all of my machines for dust collection with a shop vac, because I understand that that's the standard equipment that many of us are restricted to using, whether that's because of cost or the size of our shop. And of course, all of us deserve to take the best care of their health that you possibly can. And I also acknowledge that there's a lot better options out there if you're more stationary, aren't restricted to space, or have a little bit freer funds to spend on machines. And a large high flow dust collection is ultimately the best thing for your health and for keeping your shop clean. Anyhow, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hammer that thumbs up. If you have tips for miter saw dust collection or other dust collection, and you want to share that specifically related to shop vacs or optimizing a miter saw, I'd love to hear from you. I'm sure the other viewers would like to hear your input also. And if you got something out of this video, please consider subscribing and hammer that notification bell so you don't miss an upload anytime it comes. Thanks for watching.